All right, once again, we're back at the shop working on the 68 Javelin, and another situation where there's compromises to be made, and in the quest for more power, you do things that are going to end up creating another situation. You just always have three other things that you have to adapt after you make one modification. Case in point are these Hooker Super Competition headers. The biggest tubing that he could get, and he's looking for high performance, he went for the biggest tube, which was 1 7/8 inch tubing. And on the instructions it says, watch out for the headers hitting the inner wheel well or shock tower. But you can see there's a gap right there that the tube could have been dropped down and then it wouldn't have hit right here. You know, I just think that a little bit more, you know, like after the prototype and they found the one that hit the shock tower, the next one they would have made would have gone down a little further and clearanced it. Now, granted, there's a starter there, there's a strut rod bracket, and there's the cross member that has the motor mount, but this tube could have clearanced that shock tower. So the next thing we got to do is take this all apart, take some metal and, you know, cut that out and reinforce it again to build it back up, but just to clearance that tube so the motor is going to be able to rock and not be rubbing against that and going vibrating. Then another situation is they go really low. Here's the bottom of the tube. Here's this. We don't even have all the weight of the drivetrain installed right now, and it's just sitting static. If this thing really does launch and then come down hard, or slamming on the brakes, or hitting a bump, you know, just the act of the suspension going up, there's only about 3 inches right here. I mean, this is strictly for a track situation on a flat road. And you're gonna seriously need bump stops to prevent it from, you know, flattening the header tubes. The owner of the vehicle wanted to run a Turbo 400 because he's used to working on them in his GM vehicles, and he likes them, knows they're a strong transmission. He found a Jeep with Quadra-Track that used a Turbo 400, and it's got the same bolt pattern as an AMC. Well, it bolts up, but in the Jeep Wagoneer or Cherokee or whatever the situation was, they had this thing cocked into the bolt pattern so that this sits at an angle for drive shafts to clearance other things. You know, when you got four-wheel drive, the motor mounts are slotted and we can rock it. We did have it where it was sitting more level, but the tube hit the shock tower. So now we got it cocked even more, and you can see how the bottom of the transmission pan is sitting at an angle. Today we had big plans for making a customized oil pan, and before we could do that we had to know our constraints of what we had to work with. So we put the original 343 block in here and 401 dogleg heads on here, and then he's got those headers from Hooker bolted up. And here we thought we were going to be able to make an oil pan that kicked out. You see a bunch of people with small block Chevys run them for like a circle track, you know, so you could hold more oil. And then when you run high RPM for a long time, you don't have to worry about sucking your oil pan dry. by the time you end up getting underneath there and seeing these header tubes coming so close together, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to go out very wide, or we'd be right up against the header tubes. So we're going to have to get creative about more oil capacity, maybe like a oil accumulator, like AccuSump on Moroso holds another 2 quarts. And if you're ever like on a 4-wheel drive and you're going down a steep hill, instead of sucking air when you're at such an angle, or a guy doing donuts and all the oil flings off to one side, this thing's under pressure, and then it'll squirt that 2 quarts of oil in instead of sucking air. On a drag race situation, it would be where if the front end comes up and all the oil sloshes back, then you don't want the oil pump pickup sucking air.